Today at Manchester Theatres, I am here chatting with Luke Barton, who is creating the role of Bertie Wooster in Jeeves and Wooster in Perfect Nonsense. And it is coming to the Bolton Octagon from the 4th of October. Now, Luke is no stranger to playing iconic roles, having appeared twice as Sherlock Holmes in both The Hound of the Baskervilles and The Sign of Four, but also Frankenstein with the UK tour. On top of that, Luke has been directed by the Madeline Bassett in loads of shows, including Busman's Honeymoon and The Unexpected Guest, Spider's Web. He's done loads of Shakespeare and loads of comedies, including shows such as One Man and Two Governors. So you have got quite the CV, Luke. So we're thrilled to be chatting with you today at Manchester Theatres. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
So Jeeves and Wooster, they are two iconic big characters. So just in case there's a younger generation or people who've been living under a rock and don't know who they are or what their relationship to each other is, before we get into the story, can you tell us who Jeeves and Wooster are?
Yeah, so Bertie Wooster is a kind of rich fop, I suppose, is the only way to describe him, from the kind of 1920s and 1930s. And he has a dutiful, very loyal, helpful valet called Jeeves, who helps Bertie get out of all of the ridiculous scrapes and scenarios that Bertie haphazardly finds himself in, because he's just that kind of slightly daft person who gets into all sorts of trouble. So Jeeves is always there to offer a helping hand.
Yeah, and obviously this is going to be a brand new play taken from obviously the works of P.G. Wodehouse, but it's a brand new play. So what happens in this story with Imperfect Nonsense? What kind of scrapes are we going to see? What's going to happen?
Yeah, so this particular scenario is taken from the Code of the Woosters. I don't know what number of like where that falls in the kind of Wodehouse canon, but yeah. So the basic premise is, this is going to sound bizarre to anyone that hasn't come across Wodehouse before, but the basic premise is that Wooster's Aunt Dahlia turns up at his house and instructs him to go to an antique shop on the Brompton Road and sneer at an 18th century cow creamer that his Uncle Tom wants to purchase in order to get the price lowered, which Bertie dutifully does. And in the process, his Uncle Tom's kind of rival in the silver collecting game, Sir Watkin Bassett, gets hold of the cow creamer and takes it away to his country manor house. And then Bertie has to basically go and try and retrieve this cow creamer on behalf of his Aunt Dahlia. That entire explanation sounds nuts if you haven't come across Wodehouse, but that's exactly the kind of scenario that in every story Bertie has to, be challenged with, and needs Jeeves to help him along the way. But it's really fantastic fun. So even if anybody's listening to this going, what? Trust me, it's really funny. It's really funny.
Yeah, but that's what makes it, isn't it? And you've mentioned a couple of the characters there that that people might know and love. Are there any others? Like, we got Aunt Agatha or Madeline Bassett or maybe Gussie Fink-Nottle, anyone like that? Yep.
So we've got Aunt Dahlia appears in this one. We've got Aunt Dahlia, Sir Watkin Bassett, Gussie Fink-Nottle, Stiffy Bing, and Roderick Spode. All of whom obviously have the most marvelous Woodhousian names. But yeah, they all make an appearance in this particular story. So as well as the very familiar Jeeves and Wooster, you've also got this great collection of bolder than life crazy characters that appear in the stories as well.
And is that, I might have got this wrong then, is the three of you doing this show? Are you multi-rolling, or have I got that bit wrong?
No. There are three of us in the play. I probably got the easiest gig, really, because I'm only playing Bertie Wooster. So it's the other guys who are frantically running around backstage doing quick changes and coming on and playing all of the other characters between them. So, you know, I've got the easiest job.
But you've got, well, happier because we've got this big TV show that was award winning. You know, it won all these different awards, Jeeves and Wooster, with the roles played by Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. So at first you go, oh, brilliant. I've got all of these shows that I can watch. I've got loads of research. But then have you got the easiest job? Because you've then got to look at that and go, yeah, but I need to make like Bertie mine and not play a Hugh Laurie version of Bertie. Yeah. And that must be really hard, actually. Yeah,
I think luckily I hadn't really come across the television show. I'd sort of seen the odd clip, but my appreciation of Hugh Laurie really comes from Blackadder more than Jeeves and Wooster. But to be honest, I'm quite happy about that, because it does mean that I don't have that as a reference point to accidentally fall into. I know, to be honest, I hadn't really come across the books much. Again, knew of them, kind of roughly knew of some of the main characters. So it's been a really great kind of job for that, to be able to just approach the books and build Wooster from what I interpret from these kind of brilliant stories, without having that sort of those other versions of the character there. You know, I mean, you mentioned that I played Sherlock Holmes before. I mean, you know, I'm no stranger to playing characters that have been played by many famous, brilliant actors before me. And you know, it is a challenge when everybody's got their own particular version. But I think, with this one, you know, people come, I think, because they want to see Bertie Wooster and Jeeves brought to life. So I think hopefully I do that justice with Bertie. Even if you've seen Hugh Laurie do it, I think there'll be plenty to enjoy in how I play Bertie Wooster. Fingers crossed.
Oh, absolutely. Honestly, and one of the things to enjoy, I think, is the way, obviously I've got quite a strong northern accent, but one of the ways that Bertie talks with his, you know, his Wodehouse and his I says and all of this. And me and my friend, we were in America. We decided to be very British one day to see what would happen. We couldn't stop. We couldn't stop talking like that. So have you found it quite infectious, or is it just...
I mean, it's just the Wodehouse's writing, you know, the language and the descriptions that Bertie uses. You know, one of my favorite lines is he gets some bad news delivered at one point without giving anything away in the story. And it's quite shocking news. And the line is, the news hit me like one who, picking daisies on the railway, catches the 4:15 in the small of the back. And I just think that's the most glorious, you know, fantastic description that only a Bertie Wooster could possibly come out with. But I mean, the language, you know, the comedy in this show, it's got everything. It's really true to Wodehouse's language and the comedy within that, the characters and how big and bold they are. But we've also got loads of physical comedy. You know, there's something for everybody, whether you're a Wodehouse fan and know lots about Jeeves and Wooster, or if you've never come across the stories before.
And maybe what you've just said there actually answers my next question, because I was going to say, obviously on paper, Bertie is someone who, you know, is quite dismissive of money, of people who don't serve him in that moment. He's quite petulant and spoiled, yet we do all love him. And it's probably things like that. Like you say, he comes out with these things and this beautiful way of talking. And I mean, what is it, do you think, that makes us connect with him?
I think for me, I think Bertie is like a Labrador puppy. And that's how I'm sort of playing him, which is that he very much exists in this sort of upper class world. He has servants, but he's also completely sort of blinkered by that. He's just that's the world he lives in. He just is surprised by everything, and almost in a way, I'm just playing it as Bertie's just always completely happy to be there. He's just so optimistic about everything, no matter how, you know, tricky these situations are. You know, retrieving a cow creamer from you know, his Uncle Tom's rival in the silver collecting game. You know, he talks about it being, you know, one of the biggest challenges he's ever faced in all of the challenges of his life. but he takes it with such kind of good humor and yeah, charm. That's the key thing. You know, he's a very charming character. He's never rude to Jeeves. He's never ungrateful for Jeeves's help. He's just kind of, oh, okay, Jeeves, I'll just do that then. He's just keen to help everybody, and an absolute joy a character to play, really.
Yeah, and like you say, he's just got this charm, hasn't he? And there's also, I think, with the writing, there's also the comedy comes from a lot of the sense of incongruency, kind of like the way that things maybe should be, but the way that they are. Like, you've got Jeeves, who is the valet, but he's the one with all of the knowledge and you know, the brains and all of this. And I think that sense of incongruency and comedy and things, I think is probably something that most of us do relate to. So do you think maybe that's why these characters have stayed so popular and stood the test of time?
Yeah, I think, you know, we had a chat with someone from the PG Wodehouse Society, and we were kind of talking about, you know, where these stories came from and Wodehouse. And he was saying, you know, that Wodehouse very much wrote these stories as pure entertainment. It was there, you know, it wasn't meant to kind of be sort of any kind of social commentary or anything like that. It was just there, you know, a big, vibrant collection of characters in these daft situations that were very familiar to us, and that we would take real pleasure in watching them try and get out of those situations. But that being said, I feel like the reason why, you know, Bertie Wooster is so popular and remains so popular is kind of in a way because, you know, daft, idiotic, upper class people, I mean, you know, forgive me, but we're sort of governed by a lot of those kind of people, aren't we? Really, they are very active in our like lives all the time on social media and in our politics, on the television all the time. You know, Bertie is the kind of person who just lives in that world. He doesn't, but also doesn't quite conform to its rules. You know, one of the recurring jokes in the stories is that he loves to wear these completely outrageous outfits, and Jeeves, who is very proper and respectable, has none of it, and, you know, it burns the clothes that he wants to wear and deliberately loses them and those kind of things. Bertie has had the best education anyone could hope for, you know, in this country. He goes to Eton and then he goes to Oxford, and, you know, but he's an idiot. Despite that classical training, that classical education, he's a bit of a fool. Again, something that I think we kind of go, yeah, a lot of our you know, aristocratic Oxbridge, you know, leaders that we recognise, despite their posh accents and their references, they're kind of idiots. And I think there's something about that. But unlike a lot of those people that we recognise, you know, as coming from the same background, I think unlike them, Bertie is, as we said, charming, optimistic, and yeah, someone that actually we would love to be around, because he just gets into these scrapes and is just happy to be there.
Things just happen, and there's this kind of childlike innocence and playfulness, isn't there? And I've been thinking about this in life. Am I more of a Bertie, or am I more of a Jeeves? Like, am I the one that needs to be got out of trouble, or am I the one rescuing people? I probably fall somewhere in the middle, maybe need rescuing a bit more than not. But what about you? Are you more of in real life, Jeeves or Wooster?
Well, hilariously, on I think it was something like day 2 of rehearsals, or day 3, we were doing some like recording these kind of little vox pops for social media to try and promote the show down in Salisbury. And one of the questions was, for all of us in the cast, who is most like their character? And, you know, 3 days in, and everybody just sort of slowly pointed to me. I think I'd probably like to think I'm very much a Jeeves, you know, in control, everything's prepared, I've thought about everything. But I'm much more of a Bertie. Clumsy, forgetful, happy to be there. Sometimes I just feel like things happen to me and I've got absolutely no control over them. But I suppose also I hold on to the fact that, like, things will be all right in the end, no matter how bad they get. So, but yeah, probably also slightly Labrador puppy. Definitely. I share that with Bertie. I think that's what I bring to the role, that I think me and Bertie just completely connect in that way.
So if you had his money, if you had his sense of not really having to work or do anything, I'm sure you'd still act, because obviously it is a passion, but what would you do? What would your life look like?
Well, I think I'd definitely start by dressing the way that Bertie does, both in terms of his like outrageous choice of clothes, but also, I mean, it's always a pleasure doing plays in this sort of era, because we get to wear these fabulous suits, and I don't know, they just dressed kind of so much better back then, didn't they? They took real pride in that. So I'd buy a collection of outrageous suits. I would buy a lovely apartment in, Berkeley Mansions, like Wooster has, and probably, if I had all that money, I'd probably buy a big country pile, like every character seems to have in these stories, where they've got this place down in Shropshire or wherever, the enormous mansion that they kind of knock about in the in the summer months in the country. So I'd definitely buy all of those things. Unlike Bertie, who doesn't have to work. I think I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I would have to continue acting, but it would certainly make the gaps between acting jobs a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. Sure. You could shop for antique cow.
Oh God, yeah. I'd buy all sorts of, I mean, that's again, it's one of the great things about this story and all of the Jeeves and Wooster stories, the idea that with all that money and time, sure, I'll go and I'll become a silver collector, and I'll get a 18th century cow creamer. What else are you going to do?
Absolutely. What else?
I think in all of the stories, various uncles and aunts are just up to all sorts, because they've got nothing else to do. They're just, I think the term for them at this time was the idle rich. So rich they don't have to work, but in a way, therefore completely bored. So they fall into these situations that to them are life and death, but to all of us are just completely nonsensical.
It sounds absolutely brilliant, Luke, and I cannot wait to come and watch it. So thank you so much for chatting with us today. You can catch it at the Bolton Octagon from the 4th of October, and it's got quite a long run there. So come along, get your tickets, just laugh and have some fun at the Labrador puppy that is Bertie.
That's it.
Thank you ever so much, and all the best with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.